Welcome to the Remuneration Associates occasional focus on incentives for growing companies. This particular podcast is focused on employee share ownership plans, or ESOPs. Employee share ownership plans, or employee stock ownership plans, often abbreviated to ESOPs. They're a term used commonly in the United States, but in the UK the term applies more generically to describe any arrangement that provides company shares to employees. That's either an employee share scheme where the employee directly holds shares or options over shares, or an employee benefit trust where shares are held on behalf of the employee. Generally in the UK, when we talk about employee share schemes, there are two types: those that have tax advantages and those without. So if we start with non-tax advantaged schemes, those are usually discretionary. They range from simply giving selected employees shares in the company, often with service or performance conditions, to options over company shares that can be exercised at a point in the future. Again, sometimes subject to service or performance criteria being satisfied. There are no specific tax advantages, although plans can be structured so as to not create unintended tax liabilities or to control the timing of when tax becomes due. And employees generally taxed on income and or capital gains, depending on how the tax scheme is designed. The other type of scheme, which is a tax advantage scheme, is one where the HMRC allows tax efficiencies, sometimes for both employee and employer. But they are often ignored as a viable part of an employer's equity offering, particularly when relatively large sums are involved for each individual employee. But due to recent changes by the HMRC as part of the government's growth plans here in the UK, they're worth a second look, especially as companies seek to ensure that they're paying the wider workforce fairly. The most common tax advantage scheme are either discretionary or all-employee. Discretionary share plans are twofold. One is a CESOP, the other is an EMI. The Company Share Ownership Plan, or CESOP, is a tax-advantaged discretionary share plan where options are granted over a maximum of £60,000 per employee. That's recently been increased as of April the 6th, 2023. Certain qualifying conditions regarding restrictions on the use of the shares were also lifted at the same time in April. And CESOPs are now likely to be more attractive to growing companies who don't meet or who have outgrown the criteria for EMI schemes. EMI schemes, or enterprise management incentives, are the most generous form of discretionary option plan, only available to independent UK companies that meet certain trading criteria. Smaller companies with gross assets of less than 30 million, fewer than 250 full-time equivalent employees. Structured correctly for qualifying companies, the options can be granted per employee up to £250,000 at the time of grant. These qualify for tax relief, such that there is no income tax on grant or exercise, with any gains in excess of the exercise price being subject to capital gains tax at the point the shares are eventually sold. This assumes that the options weren't granted at a discount to market value at the date of the grant. All employee share plans include SAYE and SIPs. Save As You Earn is an all-employee share plan which allows employees to buy discounted shares in the company through monthly savings. That delivers very generous tax breaks. And SIPs are a tax-efficient all-employee share plan allowing companies to help employees buy shares or offer them as awards. Now, this all adds up to quite a significant tax saving. Employees in 2021 received an estimated £480 million in tax relief and £200 million in national insurance relief from these programs. EMI schemes were the largest contributor to that total tax relief. The number of companies operating those kind of schemes went up 6% to 16,330. It's clearly a very important part of incentive programs for growing companies. Despite the tax advantages, participation in all employee share plans, especially SAYE and SIPs, has fallen. This year, June 2023, HMRC launched a consultation on ways that they could simplify the scheme and boost awareness, making them more attractive, greater take-up. Obviously, this is important because enabling lower earners to have a stake in their employer is seen quite rightly as a way of creating and sharing wealth. Interestingly enough, the consultation focused on the criticism that emerged that it was a very long time before employees could avail themselves of the tax breaks, 5 years in the case of a SIP. At Remuneration Associates, we are often asked to design long-term incentive plans, and our starting point is always the strategy and alignment of stakeholder and employee interests. This won't change, but it's worth considering whether there are tangible benefits in offering equity, or at least a portion of it, under a tax-advantaged plan. And remember, more than one could be used, either as part of the overall incentive plan or when extending equity participation to a wider group of participants. I hope you found that useful.